The Tim Heale Thirsty Thursday live stream from 7 until 9 weekly. Here's your host, Tim Heale.
Another ad break. Should we call it an ad break? This is just so I can, when I edit it down, I can drop it into 4 parts. So we've got some stuff coming up in the future. I won't do it again just now, but I'll do it again in half an hour's time. But if there's a taboo subject that you want us to discuss, to bring out into the open, to normalise, to bring it into an everyday conversation, let us know. Drop it in the chat box, and we'll put together a panel of special guests to talk about it all. Bullying, is that? Oh, bugling. Bullying. Anyway, in the meantime, I noticed that there's only 3 people out of all you lovely people out there watching that have smashed the like button or the love button. So if you'd like to do that, and then we'll get on to our next guest. Who's going to bring in next? Let's bring in Cheryl. Let's have a chat with Cheryl. Hello, Cheryl. How are you doing, darling?
Good. Thanks, Tim, for having me back. And I appreciate being here and having this conversation about grieving, about having that loss. Because I think about Viktor Frankl talking about we can't change our situation, but then we are challenged to change ourselves. And like Catherine was talking about, and I found that really good, is that sometimes it feels very lonely. You know, when you're suffering, it can feel like you are alone. And doing that self-work and looking at how you can do things to heal yourself, because that loss has already happened. So what are the things that brought you joy before? And it is a process of waves of emotions and all those things. And it's not fast food. It really is a process, and being around people that will allow you to fall apart or share your stories. So I think that's really great that we're able to have this conversation. Oh, no, I can't hear you.
I know you can't hear me.
Oh, there we go. I was like, wait a minute, I lost my hearing.
I have a nightmare with a mute button. But fortunately, it was very, very quick.
Yes, it was really quick.
Normally, I'll go on for 2 or 3 minutes, and
just talk. I know it's fun when you're talking to yourself, and
I know.
You're like, can't you read my lips?
Yes. So, I think what we're trying to do is really important to bring this subject into normal everyday conversation, because it's the one guarantee everybody has got, that one day they will lose somebody or they'll lose themselves.
Right.
It might be easier to lose yourself. What happens in the afterlife?
Yeah.
Could be a pondering.
Yeah.
In fact,
and I think
I had a chat. Actually, the episode just released this week. Sandy Byrne. She was a medium, and anybody that wants to, it was a fascinating chat I had with a medium. Go onto my podcast, go onto my YouTube, and you'll see Sandy Byrne, just been released. Brilliant episode.
Oh, I can't wait.
So, talking to a medium.
Yeah, I believe that, when we say they're gone, they're not gone. I mean, my own personal belief is you can have that conversation with that loved one anytime, and that they always are with us, and they're always cheering us on and wanting the best for us. So
yeah, absolutely. So should we bring in another guest?
Sure. And I just want to say hello to everybody that's watching, and thanks for joining in the conversation and and making this more exciting.
Yeah. Let's just give a few hellos to. I mean, obviously Dave Gardner, Craig Morris is out there. Evening, Craig. Great to see you. Who else we got? We've had several other people around. Marcus is here.
Ah,
I'm going on Marcus's show in a couple of weeks' time, straight after this show. So I've got to get the timing right on that one. So Cheryl, I'm going to drop you down, and then I'm going to bring in Charlie. So Charlie is Harry's youngest daughter. I've got echo.
Hello.
Echo.
I'm a bit nervous.
Somebody's got a mic turned up somewhere, or the speakers turned up. Anyway, Charlie, how you been coping since your dad's demise?
The dog.
That bad?
No, that was the dog, Barry.
Aha.
I guess you would call it coping, as there's some days where I don't want to do things and I don't want to go anywhere, but I've got 2 young boys, so I don't really have an option of not doing them things, because they make me, so to speak. Like, I can't say to my 1-year-old, I don't fancy getting out of bed today. I'm just talking. Thank you. I'm just talking to him online.
She's live online.
Can you shut the door for me, please?
Oh, Marianne, get in then.
God.
You can see what happens when we go live, can't you?
Always. You just put me in a pair of Crocs.
Why?
Like you do.
This time of night?
Hey, come here, please. Hold on. I've got to move the dog. Come here. Come on. Come on. Yeah, so it's even like this. Like then, I started to get emotional. Boys come in, and then you just have to snap out of it. So it is a big distraction from it. Obviously, there is times when I don't want to do things, but I haven't got an option to. So I find my biggest escape at the minute is work, because I can go there with my friends. I've worked there for 3 years now, so obviously I've been right there when I've been through it. They've known me before that. My boss I've known for 8 years, something like that. So they know me on a personal level as well. So that's quite a good escape for me, going to work, because you can all it's a coping. That's how I cope with it. It's sort of thinking about other things and getting along with it. But yeah, the boys have definitely helped me be a big distraction. Obviously, I've got my husband too. But yes, it's just.
Yeah, it's just it takes time, and I guess for you, because you've got all those other distractions, it may take a little bit longer to get you through it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
There's also, because I'm the one who found Dad after he had the accident. I was there while the paramedics were working on him out the front of my mum's. He literally just got out of the pool. You probably all know the story. He just got out of the pool with my boys, and yeah, I found him. So I've got there's certain sounds and noises that take me back, because obviously they're like triggers. So there's, yeah, still having nightmares and things like that. Just creep up and you don't expect it.
They do. They sneak up and bite you in the backside. So, are you getting any sort of counselling for that? Are you taking part in the bereavement counselling?
No, not yet. No. I've spoken with the doctors, but they say that they like you to have it 6 months. It's different with a spouse, but with a child, and especially is what I went through when I found him and that sort of thing. they like you to have 6 months so you can deal with it yourself a little bit before you go down the counselling route, which I suppose is that way you've dealt with some emotions before you get to that point. That's what the doctor
Yeah.
said to me anyway.
And I guess being able to talk about it is the main thing. I mean, you can talk it to it with your mum, and your sister and your
Yeah.
sister-in-law, your husband,
Yeah, I'm
and
really
obviously
lucky that I've got a
you,
good group around
a
me. I've got a
good
really strong
support
friendship
network around
group.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a really strong friendship group. I've got really good work colleagues. I've got my family, like, you know, my mum. Like, I've always been close with my mum and my dad and my sister. Obviously, my sister lives with my mum. I live half a mile down the road, if that, not very far away. So they've always just been round the corner. So it's weird not having that with dad, but I've got a good support group with
mm.
with
And that's
everybody
important.
really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's important to be able to sort of a talk about it and b show your emotion.
yeah,
If you need to have a little cry, a moment, then do it. Um,
yeah,
and then you've obviously got the two boys as well. Obviously for LJ, it's slightly different because he's slightly older and he's had a lot more time with Harry,
yeah,
and he so he's also going to be going through this process of where he's got that loss.
yeah. He talks about it quite often. It's funny because we'll be doing the most mundane task, pottering about the house, whatever, be out in the shop, and he'll bring him up, and that's the times when it really takes me takes me off, like catches me off guard, and I'm not prepared to talk about it. Like, so, like, obviously, I'm always ready to, like, answer his questions, like listen to what he's saying. But it's that always that moment that always takes me off guard,
Yeah,
always, because obviously he's dealing with a lot as well. I mean, he he got out as far as he was concerned. He fell and hurt his head, and we didn't tell him he passed away till 2 days later, because he was still at school. He only had 2 days left before the summer holidays, so we thought it best to, rather than Grandad's got out the pool, gone on the roof, fallen off, and died, we wanted to break it to him a bit more gently. So when he was in the pool, he obviously knew something was going on because he could see ambulances through the window. So Mum closed the curtains, and he saw the helicopter land. And so he knew something was going on. Obviously, I was outside. He wasn't allowed to come out. He was very aware of it. So and then the ambulance was on the driveway for 2 hours after. So we had to. I obviously didn't want them to see anything. There was a bit of mess outside that had to get cleared up before I even wanted to take him out of the house. Because what I've got to remember is he's going to remember all of this. So the outside of the house got tidied up, and I had to talk to the police because I was the one who found him. So we waited till it cleaned up, took him home. I gave him a sandwich, and then, but obviously I've still got to be quite strong at this point. I've got to take him home, deal with him, but I couldn't be. I mean, I drove. I'm looking back, I think, oh, I really shouldn't have drove, but it's just what I had to do to get through it at that moment in time. And then we woke up in the morning, and the first thing, because obviously it was in the middle of a heat wave, first thing he said was, "Oh, can we call Grandad to see if we can go to the pool after school?" And I said, "Oh, you know, you saw the ambulance yesterday. Grandad fell and hurt his head," and he was like, "Oh, Grandad," or Grandad as he called him. And I was like, "Yeah, I know, he's silly," and he was like, "Okay." So we went. We let him have the day at school. We went around my mum and dad's after, or mum's. And he didn't ask any questions about him because I said he was in the hospital, he'd hurt his head. And then that was his last day at school, so we picked him up from his last day. Went to my mum and dad's. Obviously, there's people coming in and out, but it's normal for people coming in and out. My mum's, so he didn't really question anything. The next day, my husband took him out for the day to keep him busy when I was at my mum's, and then he come back, and we told him then. So I said, my mum had made a book. They'd only just come back from holiday on the Friday, and this was on the Tuesday after. And my mum had made a photo book. Look, it got delivered that day. So we was looking through the pictures, and he said, "Where is Grandad?" And I said, "Oh, Grandad fell and hurt his head." I said, "The doctors tried really hard, but they couldn't do anything to save him. So he had to go to live in the stars." And he was like, "Oh, okay." So he just stood there and sort of stared at me for a little while, and obviously I could see he's processing it. And then he walked out to the garden by himself, because that's where he used to play with my dad a lot. If there was anything ever going on in the garden, he would always be with LJ, and they would, "Can you stop? That's really weird." And they would always be together, causing mischief in the garden, doing something, picking up apples, like anything. So he went up there, so I followed him out there, and it was just me and him in the garden, because obviously there was a lot of people in the house. I said, "You okay?" He said, "I don't understand why Grandad's gone to the stars." I said, "He didn't want to go, but some things happen, and the doctors tried really hard. People get better every day in hospital, but these doctors couldn't help him because they didn't want to tell him, obviously, what happened on the driveway and all that sort of thing." So he said, "Oh, I think Grandad's a butterfly." And I said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yeah, I think he's a green and black butterfly." And I was like, "Oh, okay. So now whenever we go out, we look for butterflies." And he goes, "Oh, no, that one's not Grandad. That's not the right colour green." So he's got his own way of dealing with it as well.
Well, that's really interesting. The way that you're having to deal with it along with LJ as well.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop you down. I'm going to play one of the videos from last week. I think Marie made some really, really good points. So we're just going to play that for the next few minutes. So let me bring that one in, and then we'll come back and we'll bring everybody back in the last half an hour of the show. So here you go. That is, I guess that's the essence. Is going. Everybody has to go through that grieving process. I think it's a process, because you've got the initial part of the. Some people it's anger. Some people it's disbelief. Some people it's just that immediate pain of the loss of a loved one, and then you go through into the next phase of you go into almost autopilot to be able to do all the practical things of counselling bank accounts and organising a funeral and all the rest of it.
A lot of paperwork. It went on for 1.5 years.
I know, sometimes it can be an absolute nightmare, particularly if somebody has died without leaving a will, and that is another nightmare. And their estate goes into testate, and it's another minefield, and it's just adding to the problems of the process.
Yeah. Tim, I just want to. Sorry, please.
And so then you come on to the realisation of coming out of it, and it sometimes takes 2 or 3 years before you actually accept that somebody's gone. And if you haven't had the conversation with them beforehand of what they want for you going forward, then that makes that process even harder, I guess.
I guess it very much comes down to your mindset as well, and to your choices. And Rob was the one who always taught me about the concept of choices. Again, it comes back to people's beliefs and to their spiritual beliefs. On a very deep down spiritual level, I trust that Rob and I have chosen this journey, and that set aside, because I fully respect that everybody's got different beliefs. Even those who say, "Well, I did not choose to lose my husband," you can still choose how you respond to it. the responsibility, the response ability lays with you, how you respond to adversity in your life. And it comes back to choices. It comes back to allowing support in, allowing help in. That's a really big one. It's not an easy one in grief when you are in so much pain, to allow somebody in to sit with you, to support you, and also to understand who actually is really supportive. And that's with no malintent. Some people just don't know how to support you in that, because they come from that space of what society expects you to do with grief, which I don't agree with. And that led me to that one comment I wanted to make when you touched on anger and coming to terms with it. There's this misconception of these 5 stages of grief, and they were originally written by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who's absolutely renowned in the space of grief. But she wrote these stages for terminally ill people, not for grieving people. Until this day, they're still called 5 stages of grief, which is absolutely not true. You know, they truly do apply for terminally ill people, but when you think about it, they don't always apply to grieving people. In my case, I never felt anger. I never felt bargaining or denial. It was, you know, I cannot relate to these stages of grief, if that makes sense. You might find some traces of it in it, but it's another attempt of society to put labels onto something they can't find words for. That's just my humble opinion here.
And I guess that's one of the things that we're trying to bring out in this conversation that we're having about bereavement, that it's different for everybody. And yes, I guess for somebody that's been terminally ill, that you know it's coming, or an old person that's going downhill, you know it's going to happen. To somebody that dies suddenly, there's a kind of a different mindset, a different way of dealing with it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's kind of slightly easier to deal with a prolonged illness where you know the outcome.
I wouldn't say that, to be honest, with all due respect. I think I've spoken to so many people who've had this experience of that prolonged illness, and the anticipatory grief that comes with it is really quite debilitating. It's very heavy to carry, and some people carry that for 10 years. So, or like, you know, I don't want to put an exact time frame on it, but for years, you know, and I do not envy them. I would not want to swap with them. And of course you can say, well, you wouldn't want another 10 years with Rob. Well, yes, but not for the price of him suffering for 10 years just so I've got him with me longer. Do you know what I mean? So this is a very vulnerable territory to say what is easy and what is not. I don't think that any journey of grief is easy. It is really a matter of how you deal with it and how well you're supported throughout it all.
Yeah. I didn't mean it was easy to deal with. It's because you know it's coming. And it's, I think that the initial part, the anger, is that a long drawn out illness is horrendous. And I mean, I went through it with my late wife. I mean, unfortunately, she got cancer for a second time. Going through it the first time was a year, and it was horrible going to chemotherapy and all the rest of it involved with it, and then they said that as long as if she's clear for 2 years, she'll probably be okay. A year and 11 months later, it came back and it was much more aggressive, and the second time was even worse. Unfortunately, it only lasted for about 6 weeks before she died, and that was tough.
Almost the exact same time frames for my dad. It was very similar. It's been 30 years yesterday that my dad passed, and it was the same thing. You know, after about 2 years, the cancer came back and it was so aggressive. It took him in 4 weeks. Yeah. My heart goes out to you, Tim.
I mean, that was back in 2006. We still remember her fondly. I mean, we were married for 23 years and we were together for 25. And fortunately, I married my my best mate's wife, we were best mates at the time, he died a year before her. And we got together about 4 years after my wife died, and we got married. We've been married for 12 years, and we're really happy.
I'm very happy.
We can still have those conversations about them because we remember all the times that we had together.
Yeah.
And that for us has made the whole thing bearable, I suppose.
Yeah. That's such a blessing. It's hidden gifts in adversity.
Yeah. And then that's what we're trying to do with this, is trying to help people see that there are different ways through and different ways of coping. And at the end of the day, it's your own journey, but there is an awful lot of help out there to be able to get you through it. And for what you've done with your process, helping other people is pretty awesome. So I can only thank you for that, and we'll push your books and get people to watch your TEDx.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Boom, I'm back in the room. Nearly got caught out. Hope you're finding this is interesting. Hoping this is helping everybody that's out there watching and listening. And if it is helping you with dealing with grief, I mean, we've all been grieving the last week or so at the loss of our Queen, and trying to celebrate her life. I mean, she had a fabulous life. What she did for this country was immeasurable. And yes, we've had sort of 12 days of mourning the country and mourning. But I think the key to take away from all of that is that she had a brilliant life. She did a lot for the country, and we should cherish that memory. Now we've moved on. Now we've got a king. And I think we should embrace that. And I personally would not like to see the demise of the king anytime soon. I'd like to have him have a decent go at reigning, because he's been waiting a long time for it. But I wouldn't like to see the demise of the monarchy either. I'm a royalist at heart, and I definitely wouldn't want to live in a republic. Right, that said, last half an hour of the show coming up. So last quick plug for the upcoming shows. So make sure you get this in your diary. Make sure that you set your Thursday evenings aside from 7 till 9. You know it's coming, so you might as well book it, because there's nothing on the telly. We've got the veteran suicide special coming up next week. Hopefully I've got a couple of really big guests coming on that you won't want to miss, and we're going to try and normalise that conversation, destigmatise mental health and suicide, particularly in the military, but it also filters over into civilian life as well. Once guys leave the military, they I say become civilians. Once you've been in the military, you never become a civilian again. You'll always be an ex-military or a veteran, but you're part of society, and it has an effect. So that's that. The following week, this is the one that we had to postpone, the archaeological special. That's coming. We've got the archaeologists coming back, and we're going to have a fantastic evening. If you've got questions, put them in the chat box, and put a Q beside it, so we know that it's a question coming up. The 13th of October, working on a bit of a special at the moment. Hopefully it's going to involve dogs. I'll say no more until I confirm it up. The following week, I'm toying with the idea of having another open forum, or we'll have maybe a cancer special and look at all that. And then 3rd of November, I've got fighter pilots coming on to talk about their processes, what they do when they're in operations and stuff like that. That's going to be another fascinating chat. So Thursday evenings, get it booked in to your diaries. Right, let's go back to all of our guests.
The Tim Heale Thirsty Thursday live stream from 7 until 9 weekly.